Hey everybody, Ryan here at eTrailer. Today on our 2020 Chevy Equinox, we're going to be showing you how to install the CURT Trailer Hitch receiver. But before we do that, why don't we check this out and make sure it's going to be the right hitch for you. With the Equinox being a really popular SUV, people are trying to do a lot of different things with them. And that's where a trailer hitch will come into play. Now this particular one, it has the smaller 1¼ by 1¼ opening. So you are somewhat limited to the things you can do with it. Personally, I'd recommend this one if, let's say you already had an 1¼ accessory, or you were really only planning on using a smaller bike rack or something along those lines. This would be a good fit, especially too because being a little bit smaller, it looks a little bit better, a little more discreet. But if you're looking to do some other things, you know, maybe towing or using bigger accessories, things of that nature, a 2" by 2" option would probably be better fitting for you. That's not to say that this one can't tow some trailers and things like that, but the 2" by 2" one will definitely open up the opportunities on what you can actually use your hitch for. This is a Class 2 hitch, and so it's going to have a reinforced collar there at the end of the receiver tube opening. Personally, I think this one looks a little bit better than the other 1¼ hitch available, but it's just my opinion. It does use a 1/2" size pin and clip, and the safety chain openings are going to be big enough to allow us to use just about any size hook. Now I'm going to give you a couple of measurements, and you can use these to help figure out which hitch mount accessories to get. From the ground to the top inside edge of the receiver tube opening, that's going to be about 12 inches. So if it were me, I'd look for accessories that have a rise in the shank, just to give you some more clearance. From the center of the hitch pin hole to the edge of the rear bumper, that's going to be about 5½ inches. And you can use that measurement to help figure out that if any folding type accessories you might have can be stored in that upright position without hitting the back of your Equinox. Other than that though, at the end of the day, this will be a good option for those of you, kind of like what we talked about before, already have those 1¼ type accessories. But you know, if you're looking to grow into a few more or do some heavier towing, that Class 3 hitch, 2" by 2" one is definitely probably the way to go to. But it's just going to depend on what you're trying to accomplish, right? As far as the installation goes, these really aren't too bad. You lower the exhaust down some, and you have to enlarge a hole in the frame just a little bit, so it's not really a big deal. And then the hitch kind of just bolts up, so it really shouldn't give you too many issues or take up a bunch of your time. But with that said, why don't we go ahead and put the hitch on together now. To begin our installation, we're going to be here at the back of our Equinox, and first thing we're going to do is loosen up our rear fascia. So on each side we're going to have a screw, and I'm going to remove them using a T15 torque spring. Now what we need to do is lower our exhaust some to give us some extra space to work. So what I like to do is take a strap and just run it from side to side. That way we can kind of control how fast and how far we actually let the exhaust come down. So now if you go to the very end of your car and behind the bumper, we can see these exhaust hanger brackets, and there's going to be 2 bolts that run through this way that are holding the brackets on, and we're going to pull those out. I want to mention too, from this point on, anything we do to one side of our vehicle, we're also going to do to the other side because it's set up the same way. But these are going to be a 15mm head. So we'll back them out. You can take the plastic bracket and just kind of pull that down like so. And if you follow the exhaust towards the front of our car, we're gonna have one more exhaust hanger here. This one's rubber. You can spray it down with some soapy water, some type of lubricant. Then just take a pry bar and you're gonna pry one end of it off. And then we'll loosen up our strap some. And then when we do that, we can actually get the exhaust down. So if you pull on your bumper, you can kind of work this out. And then that'll give us more than enough room to get up by our frame rails and get everything ready to get the hitch out. Now we're able to start to get our hardware in the frame. The only issue is the spacer block and the carriage bolt that needs to go inside is just a little bit too big to actually fit. So if you look here, we have this access hole and it's just a little too small for those to go in. So we're gonna enlarge that hole a little bit. I'm just gonna use a die grinder bit like this to speed things up, but it's so little material, you know, if all you have is a hand file, it's not going to take you too terribly long. So we'll go ahead and make this just big enough, that way we can get our hardware in there. Spacer block will fit, and the carriage bolt will as well. And so while we're right here, we'll just go ahead and start to get it done. So we're gonna have 3 attachment points. This hole, this one, and this one. You wanna start with the one closest to the back of the vehicle. Just kind of a pointer. If you take your pull wire and kind of hold it up, put a bend in it. A lot of times it makes it easier to get it to drop out of our access hole there. So you take the coiled end, put it through there, and run it towards the front of our car. We're trying to get it to come out through here. Sometimes you might have to reach up there and help pull it out. Be careful too, if, you know, obviously filing that down, you might have some sharp metal, so don't cut your finger. But you're gonna take the spacer block and the carriage bolt and thread that on to the pull wire and feed it up. Drop it down. And I'm gonna do that same exact thing and use the same exact hardware for our 2 remaining holes there. Once your hardware's in there, and we're not going to be using the access hole anymore, not a bad idea to shoot some spray paint up there. I just hit it with some clear, just to get a layer of protection on that bare metal that we exposed from fouling out that hole. So give that a few minutes to dry, and then we can get the hitch out. Now with an extra set of hands, we can get our hitch and raise it into position. So get my glasses on here. So you go up and over the exhaust. And then you're going to take your pull wires and put them in the holes through the hitch. So the one in the middle, we'll use that oval shaped hole there. So you have all 3 of them through. We can raise this up. We'll get our bolts to drop through, and once we have them through, you can remove one of the pull wires. Take a flange nut, and you want to get at least one of them started. Get one of them started on each side here, hand tight. That way the hitch will support itself. Once that's done, we'll just remove our remaining pull wires and put flange nuts on all the bolts. Once all of our hardware is in place and hand tight, we'll come back with a 3/4 inch or 19mm socket and snug everything down. Now we need to come back with a torque wrench and tighten down all of the hardware to the amount specified in the instructions. What we can do now is get our exhaust rehung, so we'll work the hangers back in there, and what I'm going to do is put the middle one back on. So I sprayed it again. We'll push that on, and that should make it a little easier to get our ones towards the back in place and bolted back up. And putting these in, you're just going to pop the bracket back into position. And I like to get them both started. That way we know they're lined up. And we don't have to tighten one and undo it just to get the other one started and whatnot. So once they're both going, then I'll come back and snug them down. And finally, I went ahead, removed our strap that we had on the exhaust and put the Torx bit screws back in here at the bottom of our fascia. And with all that done, that will finish up our look at and our installation of the CURT Trailer Hitch receiver on our 2020 Chevrolet Equinox.